Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of H&Y Talks. It is great to have this back. We had one with Mike Scandato of The Last Standing Inhuman, then we had one with my boys and one girl and You Bred Raptors, and now we're here with my good friend Mr. Chef Brian Tsao.
How you doing?
It's always great to have you. I interviewed you for Alto Music in NAMM 2017, and then I had you on my SoundCloud podcast, and now you're here. You and I just need to eventually co-host this.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, you know my number. I'm always down.
Yep.
So.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, if I keep hitting you up, I wouldn't be surprised if you changed your number.
No, don't worry. You're not that bad. I've experienced worse before. Don't worry.
Oh, man, I can only imagine working in the chefing industry. Like somebody texts you, this is not well done enough.
Well, it's more of like people wanting reservations, which, you know, if you're a buddy of mine, I totally don't mind. But it's more along those lines, or wanting to get hooked up or something like that. But, you know, at the same time, it's good problems to have, I say.
Absolutely. But, you know, one reason why I really like talking to you and everything is because you and I both work in the world of metal, obviously, but we also have creative passions that outside of that. You know, me working with art and you working in the culinary arts. I'd imagine, I was always curious, and I don't think I've even ever asked you this before, but being that you play music and you're a phenomenal musician and you really need to reunite with Over the Pass, being that you work with music, but you are also working in the culinary arts, is that a similar creative energy that you put into that?
Yes and no. I know that sounds weird, but as far as my life in the culinary arts, you know, that's work, and while it does require a lot of creativity, I've also reached that point in my career where I'm in a job position where it's serious business. So mentally, most of the time in the culinary field, I'm definitely more straight to business with things. Yes, when I create dishes, I definitely need to draw from an energy that's very creative, but overall, just my day-to-day workload, it does require me to not that I don't enjoy it, but just be much more serious about it and much more, as I had mentioned earlier, straight to business about things. However, when I do cook a steak, for example, for myself, or if I'm working on a dish, it's always a lot of fun, and it always comes from the same place where I draw from music creativity, which is, you know, this intangible energy that you draw from. And yeah, when it comes to music, though, I think because it has, for most of my life, has stayed, you know, mainly as a hobby slash, you know, recreational thing for me, it's got a different feel. And I also draw from a different place when I'm playing guitar. It comes from a place of me relaxing and then expressing myself in a very different way. So that, I know, is a very long answer to a very simple question, but is probably the best way I could explain it.
It's better than a lot of other answers I've gotten. But no, I found it really interesting because, I mean, you're right. It's obviously a serious field because, you know, in the culinary arts, not only is it serious because it's your job, but there's a lot of things, you know, you don't want to give somebody raw chicken by accident.
Right.
But in the end, you also did find a way to merge things together for your love of metal and the culinary arts with Taste of Metal, on Metal Injection, you know, working with Zach Wilde and Ken from Unearth.
So for those of you watching who don't know what Taste of Metal is a web series I did together with Metal Injection. It is the brainchild of Frank Godla, one of the owners of Metal Injection. He's also the producer of Taste of Metal. And what Taste of Metal is a cooking show where we get my favorite artists into the kitchen with me. I show them a dish I had created inspired by them or their music or their personality. Whew, I didn't take a breath there. And they have to recreate that dish for me, and I get to judge them on it. So it was a very surreal, fun show for me on many levels. But yeah, continue.
Well, yeah, and I'd imagine that it, you know, I don't want to say that contradicted what you last said in terms of keeping them like separate, but I'd imagine that did kind of like bridge your love for music and the culinary arts together, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, there's a couple things I want to talk about. One of them being that I always said that there's only one job harder than being a chef or working in the culinary arts or
Air
working.
traffic control.
No, I was going to actually say being a musician, being a professional touring musician, especially a hard rock or heavy metal musician. You know, you're hopping into a van, you're driving countless hours per show. You pour yourself out for this short period of time, and then you got to pack everything up. What everybody sees is the show. Everybody sees the fun part of it all, but they don't see the part where, again, they're driving countless hours to the next venue, setting up the stage, waiting, and then play the show, and then break down everything again. It's a lot of back-breaking labor, if you really think about it. And then the ratio of hours worked to amount of money you make, it's not very easy. Also, with that said, though, they're both the culinary arts and music are extremely fun things to do, I think.
Yeah.
And for me to be able to do a web series like Taste of Metal, and now my new web series Chop and Shred with presented by themusiczoo.com, this was totally unintentional, by the way.
But I was like, damn, dude, you prepared for this.
It was totally
like,
unintentional.
thank you for preparing so much.
What was I saying?
Chop and Shred.
I'm doing Chop and Shred right now. You know, I'm one of those rare cases where I really get to combine my work with my professional job field together with my passion, with my hobby, which is music. And it's been a fun ride, and Chop and Shred, Taste of Metal is one of those rare occasions where I can express and enjoy both of those things in one format, for sure.
Definitely. And, you mentioned, like, your work and your passion. I mean, you take, like, a professional musician, for example, like, eventually, they're doing their passion for a living. They're playing music, but it does eventually feel like work to them. As you mentioned, having to wake up on the tour bus every day, on a tour bus that smells like a cheese factory, at least from my personal experiences on previous tour buses I've been on. Yeah. But, like...
It gets even worse in a van.
Oh, God. Yeah. Actually, I don't know if a van is even worse, because at least the tour bus doesn't have... Because a tour bus has a bathroom, and while that can be an advantage, it's also a disadvantage in many other... But, I mean, eventually they're doing their passion, and it does feel like work. And, I'm sure you've experienced that. I'd imagine you had a love for cooking before, you were doing it on a day-to-day basis.
It's just like anything in life. It has its ups and downs. I mean, for anybody to say, like, oh, everything's been great from the very beginning, and it's great right now, I think that's, no matter how much you love something, maybe in hindsight, you'll say, oh, yeah, I don't regret anything that happened, but definitely there are always going to be highs and lows. And my association with the culinary arts and the food service industry is no different. I got into it by accident. For me, it was not initially. It was just a means to get some money because I was a dishwasher. But then as I got more and more involved in the field and I found more and more enjoyment, I was willing to put myself through a lot of blood, sweat, and tears and a lot of moments that I didn't enjoy so that it would pay off into moments that, or hopefully, the idea was that I was putting myself through moments I didn't enjoy for a bigger payoff later. I think that the greatest joys in life are things that you suffer for. So even if you go to a concert, I remember I went to see Guns N' Roses on this last tour. I had a sprained ankle, and I suffered through the whole 3 hours.
Well, you were on the floor?
I was on the floor. I was right up front. I was like only 2 people deep in front of Slash the entire show. It was one of my dreams. I had never seen Guns N' Roses before that, so it's one of my dreams to see a stadium show, general admission, and just watch Slash from like 10 feet away. Shout out to my boy Frank for getting me hooked up on that.
Yeah.
But
I had that same thing with Metallica. I was at the barrier for Metallica.
There you go.
But don't hate me, guys. I was more excited for Avenged Sevenfold. I've wanted to see them since I was 12. So.
Yeah, I think that's a poor example of what I mean by things have a bigger payoff when you suffer through them. But for example, there was one point in my life where I was a sucky cook and I would put up sucky food, and then the chef would yell at me, and of course I didn't enjoy that moment, but through that, which was a learning process, it had made me a better chef and made me the chef who I am today. So I am a big believer and advocate of not necessarily purposely putting yourself through shitty situations, but I definitely feel that hard and tough situations build character and only add to your experiences to make you a better person or a better craftsman or better at whatever.
Absolutely. I mean, like, it really does take a lot of suffering to push forward in what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And there is, like, so much failure that one would go through. I mean, from working in the art world,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there were days where I just I've punched through canvases before, which not only costed me a lot of flesh on my knuckles, but also $20 per canvas. But like, there's been every artist like suffers one way or another,
Right.
and a lot of people think the suffering artist, that means that they like grew up like on the streets and their father beat them and like had got but in the end I think if you choose a certain path and you have your heart set on it,
Right.
it doesn't matter what your past is. In the end, it's the path that you walk in which the suffering will occur.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. I mean, I don't want to repeat what I just said,
Yeah.
but as I had mentioned earlier, I think just putting yourself well, you know what? Actually, to add to that,
You just
I
didn't burn
always
yourself
say-
on purpose on the stove, right?
No, yeah, don't start doing that, okay? Because that's not going to make you a better chef. Putting your hand on top of the stove burner is not going to accomplish anything for you other than make you look like an idiot. But what I do want to say is, and this is something I tell my cooks all the time, and this is something that was told to me by one of my first chefs I had worked for, which is, the real definition and characteristic of a relationship, whether that's your relationship between your significant other, between your friend, between you and your job field, whatever relationship that is, it's not about how you get through the good times, it's about how you get through the hard times. That is going to really show the true colors and characteristics of what something means to you when you see how you react through the hard times. So I guess we'll leave it there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my boy, I don't know if you would know him, but Nature from the band Tanger Cavalry, he's one of my closest friends.
I know Tanger Cavalry.
Yeah.
I don't know any of the guys.
Yeah,
in it,
Nature, he's the front man, one of my greatest friends.
Yeah.
He says it's not about how you fail, it's about how you come back from that failure.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
It's about how you pick yourself back up and dust off your shoulders and keep going.
Yeah.
That's what my career's built on. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
But, it's funny, like, seeing Taste of Metal, I mean, I watched that series. I think I discovered it maybe about like a month or two before you and I actually met in the flesh. And we met just by sheer coincidence. But, like, I always thought that it was informative. Like, I learned how to, not that I'm going to attempt it because I don't want to risk burning my apartment down. But, I've seen what you've done. And it is informative, but it is also very humorous. I mean, like your episode with Kill Switch Engage, or right now I think the most favorite one out of all of them is with Richard Christie.
Yeah, definitely. Richard's always fun to be around, period.
Yeah. I don't envy, because I forgot whose kitchen that episode was in. I don't envy whoever had to clean that up.
That was actually Frank's kitchen.
Oh my God,
Poor
Frank,
guy.
I'm so sorry.
Actually, that wasn't even the worst of it. Funny thing is, it was whose episode? It was
Trivium.
Matt. Yeah,
Trivium,
Matt
I think.
Hafey from Trivium, where we created a lot of smoke in Frank's kitchen, and it just like stunk up his place for ages. To me, it stunk up in a good way, but obviously for Frank, he had to deal with it for a few days afterwards. Most home kitchens, they don't have an exhaust system that can handle the type of cooking that I do, professional cooking, which does involve a lot of intense high heat that will create a lot of smoke. So
Yeah, my apartment's definitely not built for that because I could smell the hallway of what people are cooking.
Right,
every
yeah,
single
there you
day.
go, there you go.
Every single day. You got to start like giving lectures in my building. But, I mean, like in the end, there are a lot of funnier times that happen with it too. I'd imagine that like, what I was always curious, because something I never even asked you, obviously you have to stage it because you know what you're doing in order to cook, but there's definitely, like, I could tell that there's something really real about it too. Like, be honest, Richard Christie was a little had a little couple in the process of cooking, right?
Well, yeah, so did I. I mean, that's what made it so fun. If anyone who knows me knows that I like to keep things pretty light and funny and humorous, and there's a whole backstory to why I am this way. And simply put, I just like to make people happy and laugh as much as I possibly can, especially when I'm in my private life. But that's just who I am, as a person. And I think Taste of Metal, again, because it combined my passion of the culinary arts along with my passion for heavy music and music in general. And I'm getting to meet these people that, I'm very inspired by, people that I looked up to, people that I never had imagined I'd ever get to hang with. And here I am cooking for them, and then they're cooking for me. It just put me in a real state of like, the easiest way to describe it is like, this is incredibly awesome. And it just kind of disarms me, and I'm very relaxed. Yes, sometimes I get a little starstruck, especially with Zach's episode.
Yeah. Who would have thought that Zach would be the one making you a sandwich?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. But it's funny because now when him and Barbara Ann are in town, they usually hit me up, which is really freaking cool. Like, I never thought of that happening ever in my life. But then at the end of the day, it's just, again, I'm just having a good time, and I want people around me to have a good time.
And in addition, you also do this for a great cause too. Just 2 months ago, May 9th, was the Small Bites of Hope event, and you had great artists there: Howard Jones, Jesse Leach, Jamie Josta, who were all there. I think Elliot from Good Tiger was also there, and you so to be able to do your passion.
Also, we had Eddie Ojeda of Twisted Sister.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't see him.
Yeah, he was there.
And I didn't even drink that night. How did I miss it?
Don
Jameson.
Awesome. Don Jameson was there. Yep.
Man, it was like a headbanger's ball almost.
Yeah, and yeah.
But I thought not only do you get to do what you love, have a good time doing it, but you also get to do it for a good cause, which is Small Bites of Hope. Well,
yeah, and that wasn't the intention. Again, like even getting into the culinary arts industry, the food service industry, was completely by accident. Learning how to play an instrument was intentional, but for the most part, I mean, everything I've done has been a byproduct of the thing before it. So it was just a natural progression, and honestly, especially the past year or so, or a couple of years, I've just been kind of going with the flow. Yes, there's a general direction where I go, and I work very hard and diligently towards that direction, but overall, it's pretty much like, don't think about it too much, because there are too many variables in life that you cannot control. So just go along with it, be as positive as you possibly can. Although by nature, I'm actually a very negative and pessimistic person. This is something most people don't know. That's something I deal with in my private life. But again, generally, I like to have a direction, work very hard towards that direction, but then don't sweat too much about whether things go off the rails and I end up on a whole nother set of tracks.
That's a really good analogy.
So I find that by thinking like that and working like that, I was able to get involved with Hope for the Day, which is the nonprofit that Small Bites of Hope was benefiting, which is Hope for the Day is a nonprofit organization that proactively works in suicide prevention and mental health awareness. And that's something I'm very passionate about. And through this whole music industry that, through the heavy metal music industry, I was able to meet these people, and then I was able to benefit them by using my job skills, which is in the culinary arts. And to me, it just made sense, but I never, ever, ever at one point in time, well, actually I did, but there was never a point in my youth where I was saying to myself, I'm going to grow up and I'm going to do this for this cause and that. No, it just kind of comes together. And again, though by nature I'm a very negative and pessimistic person, I think my yearning for wanting to keep things light and positive when I'm around people is why I do things like this.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I do want to help people, as pessimistic or as negative I may be mentally.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm a very, very pessimistic individual myself. But then there's also times I always confuse pessimism with sometimes just being realistic. And, I think that sometimes people always mistake honesty for negativity sometimes.
Right.
But, it's really interesting because, like, metal for me, and I'm sure I can't obviously speak for everybody, but metal has the lyrics and the sound that we relate to if we're angry or if we're anxious or if we're depressed. And it's a real, obviously, there's no denying metal's a darker form of music that I think relates to us on the inside.
Right.
And so it's cool that you're also, because some people, they listen to a certain band and that helps them through their darkest times. But I think with what Hope for the Day does and what you guys have been doing, it also gives metal an opportunity to take it a step further.
Right. I mean, and it's so funny because there was this line in the movie Prometheus that really resonated with me. It's the most random of places, but they were landing on this alien planet and they saw this runway and then they said, God doesn't design in straight lines. And to me, although I'm not a Christian or anything like that, that really resonated with me because just nature in general, there are no straight lines. So there are just so many ups and downs in different directions for people to feel the same thing. And because of that, some people may view heavy metal music or heavy music or extreme music to just be noise, whereas guys like you and I, we find it to be something that, for me at least, can be something that puts me at peace or relaxes me, or motivates me. Like, listening to Hatebreed before I go to the gym and during the gym makes me really motivated to work out hard. Excuse me. Sometimes I need to listen to something to get my frustrations out, so I'll put on some Aborted or Cannibal Corpse or something like that. But for some people, that makes absolutely no sense to them, but it doesn't have to. That's what makes each individual so special and unique.
Yeah, but metal in general, I've always said that, people ask me how I can, for me, Cannibal Corpse wasn't my first metal. My gateway band was Linkin Park, and, and then it was Avenged Sevenfold, and so on. Now I listen to Cannibal Corpse. Yeah. But, it's interesting because metal to me is also the most diverse genre of music. You want something really angry, you'll listen to Deicide, but you want something to maybe relate to you during a sad moment. I after a recent death I had in my family, I was listening to Paul Bearer, and that's a very doomy and moody stuff. And then if I want to listen to something that motivates me, I either listen to Disturbed or Hatebreed. It seems like metal does have, let's see, I'm feeling angry today, let me go through my anger playlist.
I think this just applies to everything. As the world gets smaller thanks to the internet, as much of a blessing and a curse as it has expanded everything. I'll circle back to heavy music in general, but even food genres, the lines have been blurred even further. And even though I don't listen to modern pop or whatever people are listening to these days on the radio, for what I do hear, I definitely hear much more diversity in the music. As cookie cutter as a lot of it can be sometimes, there's no denying that there's more diversity in music, in general music as a whole, than there was 20 years ago.
Absolutely.
And that obviously has transcended to heavy music as well. I think, and again, I'm biased because I listen to heavy music 99% of the time, but I feel heavy music has had a lot of diversity from the very start. It wasn't too long after whoever you decide where heavy music started from, whether it's Led Zeppelin or Black Sabbath, it doesn't matter.
Beethoven.
Beethoven. It doesn't matter. I think from its inception of the concept of heavier music, it wasn't too long before things really branched out and had a lot of its own identity. It's just that it's such a niche thing. It was never really brought out to the masses, and not that any of us really care either.
Well, I mean, the amount of genres that there are in metal is just sometimes it's almost like there's a genre called Nintendo core.
Yeah, what's so funny is I growing up listening to heavy music, I never. So I lived in the States. I was born and raised in the States, and at the age of 15, my father shipped me off. My parents shipped me off to boarding school in mainland China, and so I didn't really hang out with people who were listening to heavy music. So I never knew what hardcore was. I never knew what death metal was. It just everything was heavy metal music to me for the longest time. I didn't know what a genre was. So when I came back and people are saying like, "Oh, there's this hardcore band," and then they put, whoever on, I'm going, isn't that just heavy metal? Or
when I went to my first hardcore show,
Yeah.
I kind of learned that the hard way.
Right.
Like I wore like a. Well, I actually made a mistake. I'm actually wearing the hoodie now. I wore a Bullet for My Valentine shirt at an Agnostic Front show.
Yeah, that's I have nothing against Bullet for My Valentine or all these bands that people love to give hate to, because I think they all have its place in this world. Some I listen to more than others, but there are definitely some things you want to be aware of if you want to go see certain bands live.
Yeah.
Which I fortunately never had to experience, because I didn't actually go to shows until very recently. So.
Yeah.
When I say recently, like maybe within the past 4 years is when I started going to shows, because prior to that, I was living in China. I didn't get to go to any shows. I only got to go to local shows.
Well, a band I've always wanted to see actually played in China and still has yet to hit the States. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Which band?
Dream Shade.
Oh, I'm not familiar.
If you like metalcore, check out Dream Shade.
okay.
If this channel
Nice.
was around during 2013, their record would have been number one.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, I mean, like, look, I mean, it's one thing to have like genres like in metal, like there's thrash, there's death, but then there's technical death, there's blackened death metal, there's and now there's the genre of new metal, but with a newer generation of bands of rap metal bands coming out now. Now they're calling it newer metal, like NUER.
Really? Is that really a thing?
That's what I've been talking about with people. So like, it's only a.
For me now, at this point of my life, I actually find it fun knowing what people will classify, or how someone will classify a certain genre, because for me now it's become more of a game of like, okay, well, where does that stem from? Like, why is Nintendo metal called Nintendo metal? Okay, well, that one's obvious. It's because, there are certain parts that sound like video games. But if you want to get a little bit more complex, I don't even want to bring up a certain example because I don't want to get flamed, but definitely like hearing about more recent bands that have a certain genre attached to them. Like I said, I think it's a lot more fun to go back into their history and see what their influences are. That's the fun of it for me, knowing, about subgenres. I
used to find it a little bit humorous, when I used to be like a 16-year-old kid looking up bands, but like I remember like hearing all these different genres and then like Googling it and then like pulling up like a Wikipedia article explaining like in like 5 paragraphs what the genre is, and then there's only like 2 bands that it lists like it as an example.
Right.
Yeah, it's but I find it amazing on how like these different subgenres go, because obviously people look at them as a reference, and then use those references to maybe make something completely brand new.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like I said, it's I mean, there are so many bands now, you kind of need these genres. Again, I just find it fun.
Yeah. And sometimes it could be a disadvantage because you kind of pigeonhole it. But, I mean, look at it. Like, when people hear death metal, they think of Cannibal Corpse or Morbid Angel. That's straight up death metal. Who would have thought that when death metal came out, then there would be a death metal band like Obscura or Archspire that's like more technical, or a band like Revocation, which has like groove to it.
True.
I think it evolving so much is what.
Speaking of Revocation, latest episode of Chop and Shred features Dave Davidson of Revocation.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, so he's back. Did he upstage you again by putting avocado in the food?
No, not this time. Chop and Shred is much more guitar gear focused, and then I give a cooking tip at it. So Chop and Shred is 1 part gear review show, which YouTube is kind of infamous for now. There are just countless amounts of people doing gear review shows, and I just happen to be one of them now. But I've always enjoyed gear review shows because I'm a big gearhead, which is why I'm here right now hanging out.
Yep, I got a sweet rack right here.
But then at the end of it, I give a little cooking tip. So again, just combining a couple of my passions. But Dave was on the episode. didn't involve any cooking from him this time. The truth is because I was afraid he'd upstage me.
Yeah,
But
yeah, man. That avocado, that was the. How could you not have thought of that?
It was a nice touch. Yeah, exactly. How could I have not?
Yeah,
thought
I brought
of
that up because Dave was actually the first national act that we've interviewed for Heavy New York.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah,
man.
you could find that if you just go down to the bottom of the playlist. And off the air, I brought that up to him actually.
Oh, what'd he say?
He was like, "Oh yeah," and then he told me a little secret that apparently that avocado was originally supposed to be in there.
Yeah, you know what? We won't make it a secret anymore. It happened on this episode that came out today. So when I'm doing these web series, there's just so much going on because it's a much smaller production than a television production.
Yeah.
So it's a 1 or 2 man operation. Chop and Shred is a 1 man operation, which is me. I video, I edit, I direct everything. And
God bless your soul, man.
And Taste of Metal was a 2 man operation. It was Frank Godla and myself. So there's so many components and so many things going on at the same time while you're taping. And you're thinking about so many things while you're taping. You're thinking about what you're saying. There's just so much going on. And there have been a handful of times, not a handful, there have been 2 occasions where I would forget an ingredient, one of which was Dave's episode on Taste of Metal. But it's so funny, now that I think about it, it happened again on this episode of Chop and Shred where the cooking tip was how to cook steak. I meant to put salt and black pepper before I grilled it, and I forgot the black pepper. So I actually say in the video, I forgot the black pepper. Well, you could put it on the end.
Yeah.
I'm only human, man.
Wait, so did Dave end up correcting you? I guess you just can't cook around Dave.
I just can't cook around Dave. He's my kryptonite.
Oh,
I'm gonna tell him that later.
Yeah.
He's my cooking kryptonite.
Yeah, you two should really start a band.
We should. Well, I don't know. He's already gonna upstage me when it comes to guitar playing. There's no doubt about that.
I've seen you play, dude. I mean, who knows? Maybe you guys could do a guitar duel.
You know what? Who's that guy? Will Ferrell, who hits the cowbell, but I'll do it with a frying pan and a wooden spoon instead.
Hey,
I know I can conquer that in a band. That's for sure.
It'll still sound like a better drum beat than Saint Anger.
Yeah, the sad part is that's probably true. Yeah. Oh man, that snare sound. Oh, I tried so hard to. I love Metallica. In fact, I like this latest album that they put out. I don't even remember the name. Hardwired. Yeah. I think that's a great album. I still listen to it actually right now, every now and then. But man, I tried so hard to like Saint Anger. I mean, really tried, because Metallica was one of my favorite all-time bands. Even through the Load era, I still liked Metallica.
Give me soup, give me fries, give me salad on the side.
That definitely wasn't the original lyrics. But when they were coming out with Saint Anger, I was so excited. I heard the radio song and I was like, all right, I'm not too sure what I think about this. I got the album and listened to it so many times, just really trying, because sometimes an album has to grow on you, right? Well, that was definitely one of those albums. It did not grow on me, that's for sure. So.
Well, hey, we laugh right now, but I'm not going to mention who they are on the air out of respect, because this band has a great show coming up, and I don't want to get them boycotted off of it. But he is the vocalist in easily one of the most brutal and darkest bands to come out of New York City. We can get an idea on who they are. And he defends Saint Anger. And I was talking to his guitar player about it, and he said if they're on road for a weekend, they'll hear it once. On the road for a week, they'll hear it twice. And if they're on tour for a month, they'll hear it 4 times. And the whole time he's just defending it. But I discovered actually a good concept behind Saint Anger, because in an interview with James Hetfield during like the making of that, I think they were filming the song for the title track in San Quentin prison.
Right.
And he says it's to represent anger coming out the wrong way,
right,
like the unhealthy way, right, sideways.
Now, I think that sounds like a bullshit excuse for a shitty sounding album. Listen to me, okay? I still love Metallica. Don't get me wrong. You don't have to like everything on this earth. My opinion is I don't like Saint Anger. I still love the band. Yes, that's possible, man. You can have an opinion that someone else doesn't agree on. Whoever you're referencing that will defend Saint Anger, he's entitled to that, and I will debate him on why I think it's a shitty sounding album. whatever. That is the spice and fun of life. And you know what? Whoever this dude is, I'm pretty sure him and I will end up cracking up at the end of it because we'll be so many whiskey shots in that it'll be irrelevant, okay? That's the beauty of living in this country, despite how or whoever. Again, if you disagree with me that things are so shitty because of our shitty president, whatever, but that is the beauty of America. You can have your opinion and you can disagree. It's just the problem right now is people are like, oh, you don't agree with me? Well, go fuck yourself. Well, you should go, whatever, we all need to get along and understand we don't always agree on things, and we should agree to disagree.
Yeah. Well, in the end, all three of us will agree. We can't do Lulu.
Lulu? What the hell's
Lulu?
Oh, fuck.
I think I was just about to give you a blessing. You don't know what
it
is. I won't.
No. Well, it's because I put it in the depths of my mind that you just brought it back out of. Let's move on.
Well,
let's move on. My mind is starting to go in a very negative place because of all these shitty albums.
Yeah. Well, you said you're a pessimistic person.
I am. I am only a very few people know the true me that I've worked very hard to change. And
well, now the whole internet's gonna know.
Well, hey, I don't care. You can know. That's fine.
Yeah,
I'm only human.
It makes her some.
I forget ingredients.
It makes her some great metal, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time coming here today.
Well, it was a blast being here.
Alto Music in Brooklyn. Huge shout out to Dan for letting us.
I like the energy that this room has. Just all this gear and all these freaking awesome ass badass speakers. Just
Oh my god, we had a demo today. If only you were here for it.
I wish I was here for it.
There's just times where all you want to do is just sit in the center of that chair right there and just blast the most loud thing and just let your hair. But obviously you have Chop and Shred out now. You said you just started it, so is there anything with Chop and Shred you'd like to promote or give shout outs to?
Well, Chop and Shred again is a web series presented by themusiczoo.com. It's a web series. I put out an episode every month. We are 4 episodes in now. I have 2 more until the end of the season. And then I'll probably put it on pause because by the time that last episode of the season comes out, it'll be busy season for the restaurant, and I will not have time to do Chop and Shred.
Oh, the fall or...
Yeah, fall into winter until the end of the year, basically.
Beauty's
just on. So I'm the chef of Beauty in Essex. Come by. It's a Chris Santos restaurant. Chris Santos.
Shout out to Chris Santos.
Being a judge on Food Network's Chopped.
I still need to get you on here.
He is also the founder of Blacklight Media Records, which is a imprint of Metal Blade Records. Awesome guy. So you can find me at Beauty in Essex, New York. I'm also doing Chop and Shred on YouTube. And that's the main thing, man. That's what I got going on.
Wow, that's awesome. And when the winter comes, it goes from beauty. It's like Call of Beauty. That's what I call it.
Yeah. Well, I go dark. Let's put it that way. So people won't hear from me much because I will just be that busy with work. But
note to self: do not hit you up for reservations during that time of year.
Well, it gets really hard to get a reservation towards the end of the year because we're just packed all the time.
Well, my birthday's coming up soon, so I might have to hit that place up.
Well, you may have to you better tell me about it now so I can get you set up.
Yeah, awesome. But Brian, I want to thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely.
Huge shout out to Beauty in Essex, Chris Santos, Blacklight Media, Alto Music, Music Zoo, Hope for the Day, Metal Injection, Chop and Shred. Did I miss anything?
I think you got it all, man.
That does not happen that often, and I should have stuttered at least 16 times.
You're getting good at this, especially from where you started till now. Yeah, you definitely. It's about 1% every day. Be 1% better than you were yesterday.
Thank you. But everybody, Chef Brian Tsao, everybody.